What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Bryan Falchuk. Bryan is a best-selling author, speaker, and life coach. He has faced major adversities and learned how to overcome and achieve. From obesity to running marathons, from career struggles to successes as a CXO, from watching illness threaten his family to finding lasting health, he has been through many lessons he used to develop his unique approach to inspiring others to succeed. Bryan's work has been featured in several top publications like Inc. magazine, the LA Times, Chicago Tribune, and more. He has spoken at multiple TEDx events and has been featured guest on over 175 podcasts, TV, and radio shows. His best-selling books, Do a Day and the 50-75-100 Solution, help people live better across every aspect of their lives. This conversation is super important as we talk about health during this time of coronavirus. We also talk about how you can approach a life for more holistic happiness, right? You know, he talks about do a day and what does that look like? How do we live our best life every single day versus just trying to live our best life? And I think that's a great approach to how I think I've approached life. I just never called it do a day. Really that focus on right now. That's all that matters is right now. And how can we make a choice this very second to improve our life for the future. And Bryan has really mastered that, and I think you guys are going to love this conversation. Now, before we get to the interview, I want to remind you guys that Growth Now Movement Live is coming up. Head over to gnmlive.com. Get your tickets now. It will be a sold-out event. I cannot wait to see you there and connect in person after all of this mess with such incredible people like yourself. So head over to gnmlive.com. Use the code podcast for a discount on your tickets, and I cannot wait to see you. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Bryan Falchuk. Bryan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me on, Justin.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited about the conversation. We've been connected for quite some time, at least through social media. Yeah. You've been on a number of my friend and clients' podcasts, and your story and what you've overcome in life and what you've learned through other people's struggles is super inspiring, right? One thing that not everybody does, but I think the people who persevere do is they learn from other people's struggles, mistakes, and so on and so forth. And you're somebody who's really kind of, in my opinion, from knowing your story, somebody who truly says, okay, look, there's lessons to be learned in everything that we do. And I love that, man. But why don't we start this interview with who is Bryan today? And then we'll break down how you got there.
So today I'm someone who's literally just trying to help others change what's going on in their life and what that trajectory can look like for them. And so I do that through coaching work, through speaking work. I'm pausing on that because the speaking is changing right now, right? There's a lot more virtual stuff than the in-person, but I try to verbally share what I'm doing with people. And then I write. So I put out a couple of books in the kind of personal development, self-help space. And it's all exactly what you're just talking about. And I get a podcast that your episode will be coming out in the not too distant future as well, to share these stories of other people. Because selfishly, I want to learn and grow. And I get so much from hearing how someone else has faced something and come through. And that inspiration lives very strongly inside of me and informs how I can grow. And to know that maybe someone out there can do the same thing from something I'm putting out or helping to bring out, that's kind of my mission.
Yeah.
So that's who I am today, and a father and husband and, all that kind of stuff too.
All those important things, right?
The important things. Yeah.
Let's talk about the mohawk that you're rocking right this second.
It's part of the father part, less so the husband part based on the reaction I got. Look, we're all stuck inside. I'm someone who goes on stage in front of people. And so I have to think about how I look and, if I'm speaking to a business crowd, and none of that's happening right now. Like every speaking event I've had booked for the next few months is gone. And, my son is out of school, doing that from home right now. And so it's like, we need to smile. And he's like, Dad, can we do mohawks? And normally I'd be like, oh, but Thursday I'm doing this whatever event, or I'm like, yeah, we can. And we got, some side eye glances from my wife, but just kind of went down into the basement where my clippers are at. And, cause you need that levity. And he's 11. So he's like, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to him.
Yeah.
And
his friends can't even see it.
But we've got the pictures to prove it. And the problem for me is like, I forget sometimes in some of these like Zoom calls, or I went to the grocery store the other day and I left the house without a hat. And I just had this like, oh God, what are people going to say? And then it's like, there's people with masks on. And so it's like, yeah, I look different, but so do we all.
Yeah.
So yeah, just trying to smile a little bit. We'll see how long it stays. I come from insurance, so it's like something like this would definitely not fly. I did do a charity event years ago, and it was a really sunny day. And so the middle of my head was white and the sides were red when I went to work the next day, and I'd shaved the mohawk off. So I still kind of had it, but this one's 3D. None of this like 2D white and red stuff. It's
dude,
legitimate.
I love it, man. It looks great, dude. And I applaud you for doing that, because, you're somebody who in all aspects of your life, you inspire people to think a little bit differently, live life to the fullest. I mean, obviously it's right behind you. It says do a day, how to live a better life every day.
Yeah.
And I love that thought process, because look, like we so often as entrepreneurs and even just individuals, we keep waiting for this end result. We keep, I got big goals. Once I get there, I can find happiness.
Yeah,
once I get there, it's going to be the best life. Instead of just understanding like what we have is what we have. Yeah. Where did that concept come from for you to really write a book that is really kind of taken off?
Yeah. I mean, it came from when you said what we have is what we have. What I had was about to not be what I have anymore. So I like backstory is one of anxiety and obesity, similar to our friend Adam Shively. Like I was also a previously heavy dude, which is a much nicer, more politically correct way of saying I was the fat kid. I've gotten flack for saying that, but it's true. I was like 100 pounds overweight. My parents got divorced really early on, and that just really unsettled my life. And I felt like things weren't going to be okay, which is like the basic need of every child. And you can't really do anything about that as a kid. So as soon as I became more capable, that anxiety turned into a fuel for doing and fixing and preemptively fixing. I was constantly feeling like the sky's about to fall. And so I got to jump in. And that served me really well in a lot of ways. It was super independent and capable, but also meant, I was like worked up a lot of the time, always worried, not always the most enjoyable person to be around, etc. Fast forward to 2011, I was married for 5 years at that point. We had a 2-year-old, and my wife became really sick. And every day was just worse than the prior day. And that was almost hard to understand because each day seemed so terrible. It's like, how can it be worse? And it got to a point where she was barely 100 pounds, bedridden. And I was on the phone with her doctor on June 30th, who's calling to tell me he's going on vacation for 6 weeks. And he's just like, yeah, there's really nothing else to do for her. So I'll just check in when I'm back. I mean, he literally said it like that. And I'm like, she's not going to be here in 6 weeks. And he goes, okay, we'll take her to the ER if you need to. And he hung up.
Just didn't care.
I don't know what, I mean, that's certainly what it felt like. I don't know what it was. He spent a lot of time blaming her. You're doing this to yourself and you seem depressed. Like, well, how would you feel if you're bedridden, wasting away? No one knows what's up. And the only thing they have to say is like, are you sad? Like, well, yeah, of course I am. But I like that was this light switch for me. And that's why like, I will never forget the date. I won't forget the setting, like the lighting outside, like any of it. And I walked back into our bedroom and my son's standing at the foot of the bed, looking at his mother, basically watching her, wither and die in front of his eyes. And she's still here today. Certainly not because of that doctor, but she's also not here because of me. She's here because of her. And I was doing a lot, like cooking and cleaning and, whatever, taking care of our son because she couldn't, but I wasn't there for her. I wasn't standing with her because I was so caught up in the anxiety of everything.
Sure.
And just, everything angered me. Everything was a burden. Everything freaked me out. And so I was just kind of lashing out and reacting. And obviously that's not what she needed. And that's not what he needed. Like, he's 2, he needs, exactly like me when I was his age, like, I just need to know things are going to be okay. And the one person I can turn to for that, my father, is freaking out. And like, I don't have time to read to you. I can't play with you. Go over, like, I got to cook. So I was failing the 2 of them really miserably, and that hit me hard. The thing that took me a lot of time to get to understand, and literally like 6 years, meaning, by a lot of time, was that I was failing myself. Like, I always sought to justify that anxiety because of the protection it brought, or the things I had as a result of it. I had a great career, and it's just a lot of positives, but I never realized, like, but you're not happy, and that actually matters. Like, you deserve that, because that was never part of the equation.
Dude, and so I'm going to stop you really quick, because I can relate wholeheartedly to this feeling, right? So for the longest time, I was constantly trying to fix everything. I was constantly worried about other people and how they were feeling in the moment, not worried about how I was feeling in the moment. And I actually credit my podcast. Early on, I noticed a trend with all these top performers, and it's funny because somebody asked me, like, oh, what's the common theme? And I was like, well, there isn't really. Just like you, I talk to people from all different walks of life. Yeah. And what I realized was, I ask a similar question to everybody, which is, what's your definition of success, and what are 3 things you do to guarantee that success for yourself? The definition for success was always different, but what they did, the 3 things were always self-care. They were, whether it be meditation, working out, reading a book, it was always self-care, something for themselves. And I was like, that's it. Like, that's the secret formula to anything. Like, it has nothing to do with the outside perspective of what other people think. Like you said, I had the job, I had the successful job, I had the family, I had these things, but I wasn't happy. Sorry, I wanted to just interject there because I think it's relatable to so many.
Totally. And, something we were saying before recording is, like, you're talking about, once I get to position X in my life, like whether that's a job position or financial or whatever, then I'll be good. And it's like predicating your happiness and putting it on hold until you've just burnt till you get to that place. And like, that's actually not human nature, that we're ever satisfied when we get to that place or not. You hear so many stories of people like, I had all the money and I realized I was so much happier when we were like struggling in that little 1-bedroom or studio apartment and had nothing. You can't just wait for everything to, like, I just have to make it through tax season or this, like, whatever. Like right now, I just have to make it through until we're back to normal.
Yeah.
You know what? That's actually not life. Like, there's always something. So at what point do you realize I just need to make it through always for me? And that takes that investment in self-care, because you can't just burn yourself out. It's actually not what living is about.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. And obviously it started with that self-awareness moment, right?
Yeah.
That, and then it took you 6 years after that to realize, oh, wait, it's me. But what did that look like? Like, how did you even begin the process to start to do a day?
Yeah. I mean, so that was June 30th. I woke up July 1st and I still felt it. And I'm like, this is different. Like, having been obese, there were so many moments where I got some motivation or some inspiration. Like, I'm not going to eat all that junk. I'm going to work out. And 2 hours later, it's gone. This was really different. I'm like, okay, I slept on it and it's still here. And that was like, I get up early in the morning for me time. And I'm like, I got to do something with this. So I just reflect on, like, well, what is so different? I had that feeling about how I wasn't standing with my wife and my son, and I wanted to be better for them. And that was really motivating. And I talk about what I think true motivation is. I still wasn't at the true part, which was the me part. Like, it's got to come from within you. It can't be something external. But that was enough in the moment to say, like, all right, I got to change. There's certain things that are not in my power to change. I cannot save my wife's life.
Yeah.
I can contribute to that, but I can't be the one to save her. So I got to do better for her. But there are things I can do myself. And, one is, like, I had lost 100 pounds. I put 50 of it back on. Like, lots of people who, lose weight, we go through these yo-yos. I'm like, I'm sick of describing myself as, I spent the first half of my life obese and the second half trying not to be. It's a pretty crap way to describe your life, and certainly not healthy. So I'm like, I'm going to fix this once and for all and just I'm a healthy person. So, like, first and foremost, I set my weight goal and I put time on it and I put specific actions on it. And I'm like, starting literally right now, my workout's not going to be like, this is before iPads or anything like that or streaming. So, like, I had a car magazine open, blocking the screen on the elliptical I had in my basement. Like, nope, that's gone. I'm going to put on some music. I'm going to do an interval, and I'm going to like really push myself. I set other goals. Like my job was great, becoming less great, becoming really political, and that's just not me. So I'm like,
Sure.
I can't just have a different job tomorrow, especially because I'm working from home right now because of my wife. So I'm going to start, the networking and the looking and whatever to get myself ready for that. And the last was my anxiety. Like every single time it came up, my wife had been pushing me like, you got to talk to someone about this. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'm too busy, too much stress. How can we afford it? Like every excuse in the book, and they're all valid.
Every person with anxiety would think all of those things before just taking action.
Because the idea of acting on the anxiety creates more anxiety. And keep in mind, like that anxiety, the part of your brain that's coming from is there to protect you. It's trying to help you. It's trying to save you from things. So when you take a step that may shut that off, that's dangerous to that part of your brain. It's like, you're not listening. I'm trying to save your life. And now you're trying to stop me. Like, alarm bells go off even louder. So it's a direct threat to my well-being. And a big part of it was just like with the weight. When I lost 100 pounds, I didn't lose 100 pounds right here. Like in no single day did I lose 100 pounds. Well, in no going to see a therapist was that like, I kept thinking like, how am I going to make like 80 appointments work and, do this for years and it's going to impact our life. Like you just have to go now. You just have to go once. And if that goes great, awesome. You can find a way to go once again, but you're not going 80 times when you go to schedule that first appointment. And it's that sort of mentality that started to be the building blocks that do a day. Yeah. So for me, it's like, it's an execution strategy. So you have your motivation, you have the goals that you pointed at. You do have to start with loving yourself, like back to the self-care thing. Because if you don't think you're good enough or deserve it, the rest of the conversation is pointless because you're going to sabotage the whole time.
Yeah. Well, how does somebody who doesn't love themselves, or truly there's a lot of people who hate themselves, for sure. How do they even begin that process? I think that's one of the hardest things.
Yeah. There's some light kind of low-hanging fruit things we can do to help. And then there's some more serious things that we need to be challenged on. And as a coach, like this is the stuff that usually leads people to cry during sessions, in a good way. So people feel awkward with that, but like that's a release and we need that. So the low-hanging fruit stuff, the one I always fall back on is look at your use of the word but. So like in a positive context about you, or when someone's trying to instill you with a recognition of your strength, how quick are you to dismiss that? And we do it in little and big ways. And it's kind of like it's socially acceptable. It's like, oh, you look great today. Oh, but thanks. But I just fell out of bed this way. Or thanks. But it's because I just spent $100 getting my hair done. And, or it's only because I'm wearing this new outfit or whatever. Like we dismiss it. Why don't you just allow that nice comment to just say thanks? And actually the other person would probably appreciate that more because all you're doing is invalidating their opinion, and that no one likes that. So like, you think they're going to compliment you ever again? So if someone says something kind about you, including yourself, just let it sit. Just say thanks. As soon as you hear that word but, stop. Right. It sounds small, but actually it starts adding up because the language we use starts to influence how we think about things. So that's kind of first and foremost is like, just having this conversation with my wife in the midst of everything going on and with her health. Like this is a really scary time for her. And her concern is like, is she spiraling back towards where she was in 2011? And, it's like, you've been through much harder things before. You've been further in that spiral and come back before. And her immediate response is, but I don't know, this time could be different. Yeah. She's not even saying like, that's true, but she's just going to the dismissal. And it's not a judgment of where she's at. It's just recognizing like that is taking away the power from the good thoughts about yourself. And it's proven like time and time again. We were talking about this guy, Mark Nepo, who's a poet and an author, and he had a brain tumor that through his mentality literally on the way into surgery is when they got the test results that the tumor was gone. So like he didn't have the treatment and he beat his first tumor. And my wife's like, yeah, but then his cancer came back. Well, it was a completely unrelated, different kind of cancer. Yes, he did get it again, but I interviewed him. She's read all his books. Like he doesn't talk about it that way. He doesn't say, but then it failed or I was weak. They're discrete things. And he still sees the same power in our mindset and how we relate to the journey. So that really does matter, and it does take work, and that's okay. But you got to start somewhere, and you have to be willing to allow for that good about you to stand in the world.
Dude, I love that. And it is true. Like that inner dialogue is just so important for everything that, and how we navigate. And I love that you put it in with like, listen to the buts, like what kind of excuses are you making for yourself versus just accepting the reality of what life is, how life is working for you right now. Yeah. And I absolutely love that, man. And obviously you've gone on and you've accomplished so much. And I want to talk about that. Like you've gone on to run ultra marathons?
No, just in my head. Yeah, I've done a marathon though. But yeah, marathons and like 100-mile cycling events. I've climbed a bunch of mountains, and I'm like deathly afraid of heights. I mean, honestly, like 2 steps up on a step stool to change a light bulb, a thought crosses my mind, but I've done it, you know? But it's like, rather than any of the specific things, what it is these are all things that literally I wouldn't even have stopped to contemplate putting on a bucket list, because they're just like so far out of the realm of even being considered, because they're just too absurd. So like, I don't know that I should say this because maybe it'll keep me off, but maybe they won't choose me anyway. But I applied for a TV show, a reality show where people are put to like very extreme challenges in a hard place to survive. I've always wanted to do that. And when I was a big fan of the show, I was like, I could never, like, come on, physically, I could never do that. We're kind of like rewatching it now, and my son's getting into it. And I'm like, I absolutely can do that. It will be one of the hardest things I ever do. And I can absolutely do that. Like, I know I could survive all 39 days. Not that that's what it is or what it's called, but if it was, but you know what I mean? Like that, like instantly the butt came in before. And now it's like, bring it on. I am going to do that. I'm going, like, if they choose me, I will get it done.
So what's obviously this took a long time, right? To get completely healthy to whatever, like, how do people get into that first step? And on my show, a lot of my solo episodes, I talk about that. I talk about how stop worrying about the end result, worry about right now. And how do you make that first step or that next step? Everybody's talking about Frozen 2 now, and, make the next right step. But what was it for you? Like, how does somebody start to move? How does somebody get out of that funk?
Yeah. So what has been the game changer for me, and this is what was forced upon me, is that sense of purpose, or that sense of your why. And it's like, tons of authors and speakers out there talk about this idea, and it's because it's real. So whoever talks about it in a way that resonates for you, awesome, latch on to that. But you do have to figure out what actually matters to you above everything else. And, I go through a series of questions to tease that out, but there's no workbook for that. There's no, like, you don't go to someone to get that answer, because it can only come from you. And so it does take self-exploration, and it takes coming up with some answer and then come back to it and question why. Like, it's because of X. Well, okay, why does that matter to you? Because you got to get under the surface. And ultimately what you're working on is that thing at your core that in those really tough moments, you can tap into and be like, this is why I will take that next step. This is why I continue on, even though it's hard, even though I'm scared. That's the piece that overpowers all the quitting for me. And for everyone I've coached, and for, all the people I've talked to, it always comes back to the same, like, you have to know why you're doing it. And if you get at the true form of that why, it will take you through. Then the question is, like, how do you take each step? And you got to know where you're walking. And sometimes it's ambiguous. Like right now, I left the day job world, and I'm trying to build this other space, around my writing and speaking. And I say, it's like, I'm on a path. There's a lot of fog around me. I can't necessarily see exactly where I'm walking or where it's heading. There's going to be branches in that path. I may not even be able to see the branches, but I know probably 6 months from now, or whatever it is, some of that fog will have lifted, and I'll have more of a sense. But I know I'm taking steps right now, and it's the right now piece where, like, that execution mindset comes in. And that's the essence of do a day, is like the word day or today. It's not about literally today. It's about this moment. And where we tend to get hung up is either spending time in the feelings from what's happened before, and not the lessons of it, but the regret, the shame, that, like, I really messed up. I fell off the wagon. I was mean to them. I ate those things I shouldn't eat. Whatever. And you live with all of that on you today, and it influences how you behave today, rather than like, I took a wrong step then. Why did I do that? What could I do differently next time? So it's not like you ignore it. It's not that you get a free pass. You grow from it rather than living with it burdening you today. And we do that with tomorrow. And that was definitely what the focus of my anxiety was the tomorrow. It's like, well, what if this happens? And what if that? And how, I've already done this much. I can't possibly do the rest of it. It's so hard. You like bust your hump at the gym, get on the scale, and it's like, you don't have 100 pounds lose. You have 99.6. It's like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? It's like, dude, you're not losing 99.6 today. So that's not relevant. That has been the huge unlock for me. And God, especially right now, like we were talking before, it's the ambiguity of right now. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what isn't going to happen. Guessing about it and working yourself up or making decisions on those guesses isn't going to serve you. It's going to take you from the clarity to make the right calls right now. Because otherwise you make decisions based on insecurity, and nobody makes good decisions when they make them from a place of insecurity, except by chance. That's the only reason why it might work out. It just happens to. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I love that. Like you really don't know, but all you can do is make the right decisions today, like you're saying, to set yourself up for any potential outcome.
Yeah.
Because again, like all I can do right now is, we talked about obviously, and I don't know 100% when this will air, but it'll still be very, very relevant, which is coronavirus, it's COVID-19. It's how it's affecting the economy, how it's affecting entrepreneurs, how it's affecting all those things.
Yeah.
And I don't want the episode to become about this, but I went, okay, I have to take a look at my event, which I knew I had to move, and I was going to wait a while. And I was like, no, I need to make the call now to make other people feel safe, secure, and whatever. And all of a sudden, at least in my position and yours as a coach and all these other things, you become responsible for other people's safety, whether that be financial safety, health safety, whatever. And you have to take on this leadership role. And I get why people can get anxiety in these moments and whatever. But again, all we can worry about is right now, right? And you've built this whole entire career off of it. And now I think it's cool for you. This is the greatest test.
Yeah.
For you, like, yo, does this really work? And it really does, man. So beyond, okay, now I need to worry about right now. I need to take action right now. I don't have to lose the 99 pounds. I need to lose whatever I can lose today, whatever. So how do you shift beyond that and then take it to the next level and begin to, and like the slogan is how to live a better life every day.
Every day. Yeah.
It's about creating that great life. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So I very much believe like the sum total of these moment-based successes, because that's what you end up happening is like you make a better decision in this moment. That is a success. Whether it's the end goal or not, that's a success. When you chain those together, you do end up reaching your goals or well beyond that. So like with my weight the second time around when that morning, July 1st, I set a goal. I was 222 and 19 point something percent body fat. I used to know this off the top of my head, but I just don't care anymore because it's not who I am.
Now you're like 1% body fat.
Not quite. Since I shaved my hair, that's where all my fat was. It's like I wanted to get to 185 by the end of the year. So from July 1st to December 31st, 185. And I think I said like 12% or whatever. I didn't do it. I got to 185 on my birthday in October. So I got there ahead of time, and it's because I let go of all the, oh my God, how am I going to, and what if? And I just made the best decisions I could make each and every day. And I didn't give myself a pass. Like yesterday I did 40 minutes. So today I only have to do 20, and I could have that chocolate bar because or whatever the decisions are. Maybe I did allow myself to do that for other reasons, but I understood it. It was purposeful. And it fit into the plan. And in that way, I made better choices in every single moment that put me ahead of schedule. And I got down to 180 by the end of the year. And I've basically been there since the end of 2011. I got down to like 169 when I was marathon training. And I've been as high as maybe like 184 or something. And I weigh myself every day. It used to be because I was afraid. And because it's like, oh God, I can't eat now. I have to do more on the treadmill or whatever. And it's like, enough with the punishment. I weigh myself actually for the opposite reason. I don't care if it's over 180 because I've got it. Like I know what I need to do and weight will fluctuate and I'm fine with that. I'm more looking on the other side. I don't want to see a pattern where my weight's dropping. So when it came down to 169, I actually couldn't stop it. I started like binge eating. I was eating ice cream and donuts and like it just kept falling.
Wow.
So I used that to check whether I was putting myself in danger or if something else might be going on.
Is that because of the ridiculous amounts of like miles you were running, or like?
So that particularly was, I had started splitting my workout into a number of like 15 to 20 minute intense cardio, like interval sessions. And it just fired my metabolism so hard. And I was doing the slow carb diet. So you put those two things together and I was happy, but I was getting way too thin and my metabolism was just on fire. And with my situation at home, I don't sleep very much. When I get home, I'm not like kicked back on the couch. Like I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm doing the bedtime routine with my son. Same thing in the morning is like I get up super early to have me time before I have to serve others. So I was burning the candle, not just at both ends. There's like 3 more flames across the body.
We were lighting that some bitch in the middle.
Yeah.
We're like,
so then it's like, yeah, like, okay, I don't need that third interval session, even though it's short. Like that's going to stop. And I'm not going to eat all these donuts, but like clearly I need a higher calorie intake and I just need to regauge it. And it backed off. The funny thing is on social media with the whole like thin is good mindset, people like I was posting my weight every day and I had like some guy from college just like, awesome, man. I bet you get to 165. You can do it. I'm like, 165? Like I should not weigh. I was 6'2" at the time. I'm a little shorter now. I should not be 165. This week I got down to 176 in the past like 10 days or so, twice. And it's like, I said to my wife, it's like, I need to eat more. Like help me remember to eat more. It's funny. It's like, it used to be fear of gaining weight, but you know,
how much do you think that is? Like, I believe what you focus on becomes true when you start to believe it. Like how much of that is like your mind taking control of how your body's reacting to certain things? Because like before, like you said, you couldn't lose weight for the life of you. You tried everything, you keep gaining, and now all of a sudden you keep losing, and you like have to battle to maintain weight. Like what do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I think mindset is a big piece of it. I'd say mindset is why I maintain the being a little underweight. Like if I used to track my calories. I'm vegan. And when I first became vegan, I was training for a marathon. I'm like, okay, I don't know enough about vegan nutrition to make sure I'm eating right. When I did that, my weight was really well dialed in. I don't track anymore because I have a pretty good feel for it. But there's times where it's like, okay, I'm not totally aware of my burn. I'm not paying enough attention to what I'm eating. And so I'm just behind the curve.
Yeah.
And look, this is a difficult time. Like, the other night, my wife and I didn't sleep because she was going through stuff with her health. And so like, yeah, you happen to burn a lot more calories when you're awake than if you're asleep. Yeah. And so like, I wasn't, it's almost the opposite of what you're presuming is I wasn't being mindful. And so, I got off track and I just bring it back. And so I use the weigh-ins just to remind myself like, okay, what's the deal for today? Like maybe I don't do weights today. And that's okay. So I find mindfulness keeps me on point. And when it slips, I see the impact of that and I don't beat myself up for it. Just say, okay, like I need to pay more attention to that. And I will, because I have.
Yeah.
And I get back to it. And it adds up to so much more than you thought it ever would. Like I was in the C-suite of a public company before I was 40, which never thought that would happen. Greatest job I ever had. Like, I miss it in a lot of ways. I was commuting to Atlanta every week to do that. Jeez. So I don't miss that like lifestyle or obviously right now, but like, that wouldn't have crossed my mind at all, dude. So that is very much about the way I added up my achievements in every day, respecting myself in that process for sure.
I love that, man. So I told you a question that I ask every single person earlier in this interview, but I do want to know from you, obviously, because as you know, as a podcaster, you get to talk to some of the most successful people on the planet, however you want to define success. So my question for you is, what is your definition of success? And then what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Yeah. It's very much about impact for me. And that's not a tangible thing to measure. But every day I look for some sign that someone has taken in something I've said or put out there or shared through someone else. Like, it doesn't have to be my idea. Like you coming on my show, telling your story. Like if someone takes something from your story, I feel uplifted from that. I want to know that what I'm trying to put out there matters to someone who's struggling because I've been in their shoes. So that's my measure of success. And I've been really blessed since putting my book out. Really, I've gotten something every day.
Awesome.
Like doing a talk, getting off stage and having people lined up who are all crying, that's so profound. And it's not a selfish or ego thing. It's literally like that person's better. Like I just touched something in them that gave them hope or gave them a path or gave them a light that will help them. And that, like, I don't know how you ask for more than that. And the same thing as like being a father it's the same thing. I just want to know, like, my son is better through our relationship and through what I do for him. As for my wife too. So that's, for me, it's impact. And what are the three things?
Yeah.
So one is, and I'm not stealing this from you, but it does start with me. And that's how I start my day is I know for me to do that, I must start every day with some focus on my own needs. So it's meditation, it's exercise, and it's just, at the end of that process, I just give myself a centering on what is it I hope to achieve today? Like, what are the major things on my calendar? Sure. But it's more like, what's the point of those things? Where am I trying to get to? So the first is that period, that meeting with myself, if you will. And then I want to feel that connection with my family. So giving some sort of time specifically and dedicated to them. And that's, it's not all bad right now being stuck in the house. Like, we get to do that. And we're sure about it. And I remember, like, bedtime for my son last night, the three of us were laying in his bed and just felt it. I'm like, I'm really thankful for these moments. And it's hard and people are suffering and all that. And there are still things that come from it that we can value. And then similarly, the third thing is I try to put something into the world that has that kind of feel for others. So like delivering on that impact. And I got a lot of automation in my social media feeds. Like, it ain't that. But whether it's an episode of my show, whether it's a piece of writing, a phone call, like connections like this, like I took something from it, interviewing people for my show. Like, I've at least built a stronger relationship with them, or maybe it's a coaching call I have with someone. Those have become really interesting right now because life it's just turned, and so there's, so some outward connection to the world that it's like, that's a piece of that impact. And if I can hit on those three things, then I'm good. And I can honestly say, Justin, I haven't missed any of that in the 9 years I've been doing this. Like, there is not a day where I looked back, and I do reflect on it every night. I have not been able to be like, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I haven't had to say that.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. So how does somebody get a hold of you? How do they reach out to you? How do they get your books, all that stuff?
So everything is at bryanfalchuk.com. And
Bryan with a Y.
Things, Bryan with a Y, Falchuk with a look in the show notes because you ain't gonna spell it. And that's it. And like, my social and all that, everything's linked up there. My books are there. Speaking, I've done 3 TEDx talks. They're all there. So you can take everything in. Tons of articles for Inc. and other places. Just go to bryanfalchuk.com. You can find all of it.
Awesome. Highly recommend, guys. Check him out. Listen to his podcast, Do a Day. Recently dropped the podcast. Good call. So look him up. Do a Day with Bryan Falchuk.
That's right. Just do a day. Justin Schenk inspiration on that one.
That's it, man. So obviously this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement. So I wrap up every single interview with this one question. That is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
It can be hard to pick out one, but I'm looking at this book on my bookshelf that remains the most beautiful thing I've ever taken in. So I have to give it credit. It's a book called Open Heart, Clear Mind. Reading that, bigger than a single moment, but reading that was the most inspiring thing I've taken in. Most pivotal was that call with the doctor about my wife, but inspiration truly was that book. It brought such clarity and peace to my mind. And I will be forever grateful for being recommended to read that, Open Heart, Clear Mind.
Awesome. Bryan, thank you so much, man, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with my audience, but also doing a day every single day to inspire your family, to inspire the world, your clients, and everything else in between, man. Really excited for our friendship, and make sure you wash your hands every day, multiple times.
They're bleeding from that, dude. Always.
Dude, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.